You know, I really like tea. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and welcome to the best heavy loadout for 2019. So in this video today, we're going to take a look at all the weapons available to the heavy class in Team Fortress 2. We're going to do it in groups of primary, secondary, and melee. We're going to look at the positives and negatives of each weapon, and then at the end, we're going to tie it together into what the best class loadout is for the heavy. I've taken some time and have played with each of the different various weapons that the heavy class offers. I've gone online and done research on what other members of the community thought about which weapons were good and for what reasons. As many of you longer time viewers of the channel know, heavy is actually my main class in Team Fortress 2 and I have over 300 hours in it. Additionally, I will not be covering any reskin items in the game such as the fish cake or the robo sandwich, since those are just cosmetic variants of the already existing items like the sandwich and the Dalokohs Bar. Also, all statistical information that I use in this video has come from the Team Fortress 2 wiki, so big shout out to those guys over there and all the community members for keeping that up to date and well written. So without further ado, let's get into it. The first heavy primary is the stock minigun. Now, all heavy primaries have 200 bullets available in the gun's chamber to fire. Additionally, critical damage is approximately 3 times what the base hit point damage is. This is the only time I will be saying this during this video. The stock minigun has a base damage rate of 9 hit points per hit and shoots 40 rounds per second. Now, just like all the other heavy primaries, the minigun has a secondary fire where it spins up the barrel without firing. That way you can have the barrel spin up so you can begin firing quicker at approaching enemies while you're walking. The downside to this is that as you're walking with the barrel spin up, you are walking at a much slower rate. This isn't unique to the minigun, however, this is for all heavy primaries. Like most TF2 stock weapons, the minigun is rock solid. You can mow down literally crowds of enemies as they approach you, due to the high damage rate, the fast firing speed, and the lack of the need to reload your gun. Additionally, the somewhat wide bullet spread of the minigun actually helps you when you're shooting at multiple enemies from a medium-ish distance away, or up close and personal. The one very real downside of this, though, is that when you're shooting at enemies from far away, the bullet spread is going to be much larger, and so the damage actually realized by your targets is slim to none. This makes it very difficult to take out targets from a long distance away, especially snipers. Also, since you're a slower class, it's going to be difficult to move closer to them without receiving massive amounts of damage. This really has more to do with the limitations of the heavy class as a whole, rather than the minigun itself. However, there are other primaries that help this issue a little bit, but we'll get to that later. As for the minigun though, this is a very real disadvantage. The Natascha. The Natascha has a base damage rate of 6.75 hit points, which is a good 25% less than what the minigun offers. So what does it offer to make up for this? Well, with the Natascha, you slow down enemy players on hit with the gun, an effect which lasts approximately 1.5 seconds after they stop taking damage. This is a decently useful mechanic in some situations. For example, if a short-range class, such as a pyro, is coming at you, you could use the Natascha to slow them down, making them powerless to damage you at close range with their primary, their flamethrower. Additionally, it's an effective counter against classes that rely on speed, such as the scout, since you make them much slower when they are attacking and when they are retreating. However, this gun also has another significant downside. It has a 30% longer spin-up time, which means it's going to take almost 1/3 of the time longer to actually spin up and start doing damage when you're not shooting anybody. Now, you may already be shaking your head and thinking, no man, this is not the gun for me. But one more thing you may want to consider first. This gun does have one more advantage, which is you have a 20% damage resistance when spun up, and your health is less than 50% of your maximum health. So the real question at the end of the day is the extra damage resistance and the slowdown mechanic enough to make this gun decent to use? Well, sadly, the answer is no. The slowdown mechanic, while nifty, really just doesn't help when you're doing less damage. Yes, you can slow down an attacking pyro or keep a scout from escaping, but you really could just kill them more effectively if you were doing more damage anyway. which is more or less just the same thing. So why not just go with the regular extra damage that something like the stock minigun would provide? Additionally, there's a lot of situations where the slowdown effect isn't very useful that increased damage would be more useful, such as shooting at peeps from far away, like soldiers, snipers, spies, whatever. And with the additional time it takes to spin up, you're going to have less time to actually start doing damage when an enemy is approaching you anyway. But Kess, what about the extra 20% damage resistance? Well, that's just really not that useful because all it's really going to do is keep you alive a little bit extra longer in some situations when your health is low and you're trying to finish off an enemy. It's not going to help you when you're retreating because the damage resistance only counts when you're already spun up, which is we've already established when you're spun up you're going to be going slower and it's going to take longer to spin up on the Natascha anyway. If it was damage resistance across the board when you're lower than 50% of your maximum health, then it might be helpful for times when you're trying to escape or run away or whatever. But it's really just not going to be enough to get over the longer spin up time and lower damage penalty. There are maybe a few times when this gun would be useful, but most of the time, you're going to be doing far better with some alternative. The Brass Beast. The Brass Beast does a base damage rate of 10.8 hit points, which is 20% of a damage bonus above the stock minigun. Additionally, just like the Natascha, you have a 20% damage resistance when spun up and your health is less than 50% of the max. This is hands down one of the most powerful weapons of all in the entire game and definitely has the ability to transform your heavy class into just this absolutely destructive tank, even more so than it already is. But, as you're already guessing, there's a pretty potential setback and downside to this. With the Brass Beast, your spin-up time is 50% slower than normal. Additionally, you as a class are 60% slower with your move speed when the Brass Beast is deployed. Now, both of these are pretty big potential downsides, so I'm going to cover them one at a time. First off, the slower spin-up time is a really large issue in and of itself. If you are battling against another heavy who's using the stock minigun and he's able to shoot you 50% sooner than you're able to start firing back at him, he's going to be doing a lot of damage that you really aren't just going to be able to make up for with a 20% damage bonus. Or with the 20% damage resistance, for that matter. But that's not even the biggest issue. The biggest issue is your 60% slower move speed. The Heavy is already a very vulnerable class in as much as it's so easily attackable by spies, snipers, and other classes that take advantage of poor movement style. The same could be said for pyros that try and go around you and get you from behind with their flamethrowers, or scouts that jump all around you. With the regular stock minigun or with some of the other minigun variants, you have a bit of control about how you can move around and avoid spies and get scouts and pyros and such, but with the Brass Beast that's nearly impossible because you are so slow with even just turning around or looking up or moving much at all. Because of this, the only time when you're really effective with the Brass Beast is when you are able to stand still in one area, don't have to worry about spies sneaking up behind you, and have a constant source of health and ammo fed to you. There are very few situations, however, when this is the case. Maybe if you're standing next to a dispenser, then an Engia's belt that is replenishing your health and your ammo. Maybe if you're standing next to a payload cart and have a medic constantly healing you. But the problem is, even in these situations, you have just so many factors that you can't account for because of how much the Brass Beast severely limits you. The cool thing about the Brass Beast is it takes what makes the Heavy great and makes it better, but it also takes what makes it bad, the vulnerabilities and the downsides, and plays those up really big. So the question is, do the potential upsides in terms of damage resistance and increased damage bonus outweigh the downsides of being that much more vulnerable in terms of a slower spin-up time and slower move speed? Sadly, the answer is no. You're just way too vulnerable to really do a whole lot of good for your team. And what's worse, you lose the ability to learn how to effectively counter other classes, which is what really separates a good Heavy player from a bad one. That being said, I would like to make a special note about the Brass Beast. There is one situation where this is actually probably the best gun to use, and that is in man versus machine when you're playing against bots and AI. When they're not effectively targeting you with the same mindset as a PvP player base would do, the Brass Beast can be very effective because of the increased damage rate and the increased resistance and all that other stuff. And it's also a situation where movement speed probably isn't the most important thing. That's a case where the brass beast would be very effective, since bots in MVM don't think as rationally or as logistically as actual human beings. But when it comes down to casual mode, comp, and other PvP game modes, you should use something else. The Tomislav. The Tomislav is a unique heavy primary weapon for one reason and one in particular. It has the same base damage rate as the stock minigun, but unlike any of the other weapons, it has a different firing speed. All the other miniguns fire at a rate of 40 rounds per second, but the Tomislav fires at a rate of 33 rounds per second, or 20% slower than stock, brass beast, or anything else. So if the gun fires 20% slower, what does it do to make up for that? Well, it has a 20% faster spin-up time, it is 20% more accurate than stock, and it is a silent killer, meaning there is no spin-up sound. The Tomislav has several big pluses for it right out of the gate. Having no spin-up sound makes it much easier for you to sneak up on enemies that would otherwise be able to hear you coming by the revolving of your minigun chamber. Additionally, it allows you to listen a little closer for oncoming spies and other enemies who'd like to sneak up on you. As for the 20% faster spin-up time, that just makes it way more easier to quickly pull the gun out and start shooting people and dealing damage to oncoming attackers. That's all well and good, but let's talk about the 20% higher accuracy on this gun. The way the Tomislav has a higher accuracy is that it decreases the bullet spread by, you guessed it, 20%. This keeps you from wasting additional bullets that you would otherwise waste if you had a more wide hitbox, and additionally allows you to do more damage as your damage is a little bit more compact when you're shooting at an enemy target from a long range, such as an enemy sniper. That's not to say there aren't some downsides to this though, as if you're shooting at a crowd of enemies approaching you, you will do less damage to them overall in the same amount of time as you would with a stock minigun, given that you're shooting more bullets at a wider spread and hitting multiple targets more frequently. Not to mention that you're doing all of this with 20% slower firing speed to boot. Then again, having a 20% slower firing speed isn't all negative either, since it is going to take you a longer time to go through all the bullets in your chamber and have to go around hunting for extra ammo boxes. Thus far, the Tomislav is really the only non-stock heavy primary we've seen that offers some really good advantages without too significant of downsides. But the question remains, is it better than the stock? Well, that remains to be seen. The Huo-Long Heater. The Huo-Long Heater is such a cool weapon in design that you almost really just want it to be good for that reason. It also offers a pretty unique gimmick that makes playing heavy feel a little bit like playing pyro, for the better and also for the worse. This weapon has a base damage rate of 8 hit points per second, which is 10% less damage than the stock minigun. What makes it unique? It creates a ring of flames around the player while the gun is being spun up and while it's being fired. This causes all enemy players in your immediate vicinity to be caught on fire, which includes any spies that might be attempting to backstab you. And then if that wasn't awesome enough, you're rewarded 25% more damage when shooting a burning enemy player. Sounds stinking amazing, right? So what are the potential downsides? Well, this weapon consumes an additional 4 ammo per second while spun up, whether you are firing or not. That is because this ammo is being used, you guessed it, to make the flames. This means you're going to be going around hunting for ammo boxes a lot more often than you would if you were just playing with the stock minigun or some other primary. Well, Cascarte, that doesn't sound too bad. Oh, really? What about when you're locked in a battle with 3 enemy players from a distance, a medic, a heavy, and a soldier, and you're trying to shoot at all of them, and your ammo is going down drastically while a medic is about to kritzkrieg you and he's charging up and he's at 95%, and you have that extra 10% less damage penalty to worry about. Oh, and none of the enemy players are on fire! Doesn't sound too hot, now does it? Okay, I'm gonna calm down, but for real though, this weapon is sadly disappointing when you actually play with it. It seems like such a cool concept, but it really just doesn't execute well in practice. Heavy being such a medium-range class, you're usually not finding people up close enough to where they're actually being caught on fire and you're enjoying the advantage of your 25% damage bonus. And running out of ammo so much more quickly just becomes such a hassle after a while. That's not to say there aren't times where playing with this primary could in fact be useful. Let's say you're collabing with a buddy of yours who's playing Pyro and he's going around catching people on fire and then you're finishing them off with all the extra damage you're getting from your gun. Or maybe you're pushing a payload cart and you want to keep spies away from you and you're getting ammo constantly fed to you through the cart. In those few situations, the Huo-Long Heater is at least competent, but it still is just not as good as some of the other options available to you. It's disappointing, but it's just not great. Huo-Long Heater is just not great. Alright, and now we are moving on to secondaries. The first secondary for Heavy, like it is for many classes, is the shotgun. Now, the shotgun has a clip size of 6 bullets, 32 ammo capacity overall, 60 base damage hit points, pretty generic standard stuff, standard across most classes. I'm kind of just breezing over this because it's pretty common knowledge. Now, let's talk more, instead of numbers, about the shotgun's actual role for the Heavy. Now, no Heavy should be using the shotgun unless he is just out of ammo from the minigun, because there is almost no situation where that is going to be advantageous. The problem is, the shotgun isn't very useful for the Heavy because there are so few circumstances where you are out of ammo for your minigun. And if you are, why not fall back on melee, like with your fists? That would probably be a lot more advantageous to you. It seems like I'm very prejudiced against the shotgun right out of the gate, and it's not that there's anything wrong with the shotgun, it's just that for the Heavy class specifically, the Heavy is just too slow, and the shotgun is just such a step down from how powerful the minigun already is, that it just seems like there would be so few situations where the shotgun is useful or practical to have. Now, we'll take a look at all the other secondaries the Heavy has available to it, but just keep this in mind moving forward. The sandwich. The sandwich is the first of the 4 food items available to the Heavy class. When you use the sandwich, you stand still and eat it, which takes about 4 seconds to restore a full 300 health to your character. If you use it to restore 50% or less of your health, then it takes a little bit less time. The sandwich also has a right-click alt-fire where you can throw it and it will act as a medium health kit to anybody who picks it up, restoring 50% of their health. The sandwich is the only food item that can restore all of your health, much like a large health kit. However, it also takes the longest recharge time, just a little bit over 25.7 seconds. However, if you pick up any health pickup item, such as a small health kit, a medium health kit, or a large one, the sandwich will be recharged instantly. The sandwich is definitely a very useful and awesome choice if you're trying to stay alive or help a teammate stay alive. The only downside really is just the super long recharge time. That's really where this item struggles the most. The Dalokohs Bar. The Dalokohs Bar, when used, restores 100 health points to the Heavy, making it just slightly less effective than a medium health kit. However, it also raises your maximum health by 50 points for 30 seconds, and if the player is at full health, it grants 50 points of overheal, again for 30 seconds. Additionally, the recharge time is shorter, with it taking only a little over 10 seconds to fully recharge. It can be thrown as a health kit just like the sandwich for other players, but it only restores about 20.5% of other players' health, or about as much as a small health kit. Initially, I really liked the idea of the Dalokohs Bar. The increased maximum health and the shorter recharge time on it was very helpful. But after spending a decent amount of time playing with it, I found that it left a lot to be desired. The main problem with the Dalokohs Bar is that the 100 increased health points it gives you is really not that much. Sure, it gives you the potential for an increased maximum health rate, but that's not really the point. When I as a Heavy player turn to a food item, it is because my health is low and I really need to get it brought up quickly. And since I'm obviously going to be using it in an area where there aren't going to be other medical kits, since there's going to be downtime while I'm eating it, the potential for an extra 50 health points doesn't really do me any good if the Dalokohs Bar itself can't fill up those hit points, which it's not going to do if your health is under 250. And if as a Heavy my health is at 250, it's not really to the point where it's low enough that I can't just keep going barreling through. Basically what it comes down to is that the one thing you want out of a food item, which is to give you a little health boost, is what the Dalokohs Bar does the most poorly. Potential, it definitely offers, but utility, it definitely does not. Add to that, if you want to give it as a health kit for your medic, it's not going to really do them a lot of good since it only acts as a small health kit when thrown to another player. Second banana. The second banana is actually very similar, at least statistically speaking, to the Dalokohs Bar. With secondary fire, you can throw it as a small health kit. It recharges within 10 seconds, about the same as the Dalokohs Bar, but the main differences are, one, when you use it, it restores 200 health, not 100, and it doesn't have any gimmick to increase your potential overall health rate for 30 seconds. Actually, now that I think about it, it's more like the sandwich. It just gives less health, recharges faster, and is a small health kit as a secondary fire instead of a medium one. So, is it good? Well, unlike the Dalokohs Bar, I would say it actually depends. On one hand, you can get a very decent chunk of your health refilled and have the banana come back very quickly so that you can use it again. Now, it's true that not all your health can be refilled like with the sandwich, but it's still a very decent enough chunk that it's probably going to make up for the difference, especially since the recharge time is cut down by half. So, what's the downside? Well, the other hand is that the banana only acts as a small health kit when you alt-fire it, versus the sandwich acting as a medium health kit, which is going to make a huge difference if you've got a medic working with you, which of course every heavy player should. It really comes down to what your team composition looks like, things that are outside of your control. If your team has a medic or several medics that are being helpful and active and are keeping you full of health, then yes, you should use the sandwich. But if there are no medics and you're just kind of going it solo, the banana might maybe be a better choice. Buffalo Steak Sandwich. The Buffalo Steak Sandwich is a very unique item among all the food items. Instead of giving you a health recharge, what it does is give you a special effect that lasts for 16 seconds after you eat it. So what does this effect do? Well, all your damage is dealt in mini crits, and it grants 35% faster movement. Those are the positive sides of the effect. The downsides are, damage taken is increased by 20%, and worst of all, the player can only use melee weapons. Honestly, the only ways that this item resembles a food item is that secondary fire throws it as a medium health kit, and it takes 25.7 seconds to recharge, just like the sandwich. So what are my thoughts on this item? Honestly, I don't see the point. This seems like such a pointless item to have. You can only use melee weapons, which is what stops you immediately from having any usefulness with it whatsoever. And you take more damage while the effect is active. It just seems like such a pointless item to have. The one exception would be playing on medieval mode like Degroot Keep, where everybody is restricted to melee weapons anyway. Then the Buffalo Steak Sandwich could be useful. If you're going heavy and you're playing with a weapon like the killer gloves of boxing, then the Buffalo Steak Sandwich would be useful. But in normal TF2 guns style play, don't use this. There is literally no point to doing so. The Family Business. The Family Business has a base damage rate of 51 hit points, which is 15% less damage done than the stock shotgun. Now that being said, there's a couple of pretty neat upsides to help balance this out. For example, it has a 33% increased clip size, so it can hold 8 bullets in one clip instead of 6. And on top of that, the weapon gives you a 15% increased attack speed. So the real question is the weapon better than the stock shotgun? Honestly, I'm not sure. See, I personally don't really care for weapons for secondaries for heavy because food items are usually so much better. But the Family Business does have a few advantages over the stock shotgun. Primarily, you're going to be using your shotgun when you're out of ammo with your minigun. And for this, you want to be quicker to find ammo boxes so you can start using your minigun again. With the increased speed that the Family Business gives you, it's going to be very helpful for that. Add to that you have more bullets available in your clip to use before you have to reload, and you can certainly see how this gun is attractive. The only annoying part is that lower damage rate. When an oncoming attacker is coming at you, you want to kill him as quickly as possible, and having a lower damage rate is certainly going to make that more difficult. Honestly, at the end of the day, I would have to say that the family business and the shotgun are almost like the Tomislav and the stock minigun. They're kind of just on par, in a way. The Panic Attack. The Panic Attack has a base damage rate of 72 hit points, and the advantages are it has 50% more bullets per shot, and a 50% increased faster weapon deploy time, and fires a fixed shot pattern, kind of in more of sort of a little circle shooting pattern. But the downsides are it's got a negative 20% damage penalty, and successive shots become less accurate. So basically, if you hit your target, then the shot pattern kind of widens a little bit. In other words, you have more bullet spread, so to speak. The Panic Attack is one of those weapons that got a pretty good-sized nerf back during the Jungle Inferno balance changes and all that stuff that was in that update. Before this, it was probably a pretty decent shotgun, but now that's really not the case. The problem with it is, yes, it has 50% more bullets per shot, but the negative 20% damage penalty eats away at the positive effect of having those extra bullets in there. What you're left with is a gun that has a slightly better damage rate per shot than the stock shotgun. But the only problem is that only applies when you're shooting at a very close range, and it decreases with each successful shot because the shots get less accurate and the spread gets wider with each shot that you take and that you hit your target with. Now, while it's true that the heavy class is best suited for short and medium range firing anyway with the minigun, the primary purpose of using a shotgun is if you were out of ammo on your main minigun anyways. And in that scenario, you really don't want to be restricted to a shotgun where you're going to be receiving less damage per shot unless you're really close to your target. Now, it's true the extra deploy time and the fixed shot pattern are nice features, but they really just don't make up for these downsides. Honestly, when I was playing with this weapon, my main thought was, why would I just not use this regular shotgun if I was going to be using this? It's pretty much a lot more practical in a lot more situations. Alright guys, so we have one more category to go over before I reveal to you our top best heavy loadout, and that is melee weapons. Now, unlike all the other classes in the game, instead of using a bat or a saw or an axe or something like that, the heavy just goes in with his fists. And incidentally, that is the name for the stock melee item for heavy, is the fists. The fists do a base damage rate of 65 hit points and a critical damage rate of 195 hit points. If you look at this from purely a number standpoint, it's interesting to see that you're doing about a 7% higher damage rate by hitting someone with your fist than actually hitting them with the shotgun shot. Obviously, you'd have to be close up to them, but it's still kind of interesting to think about. The only real practical use for the fists is when you've run completely out of ammo and you basically just have to punch your way to killing somebody and getting an ammo box so you can actually start doing real damage again. Killing Gloves of Boxing. The Killing Gloves of Boxing have the same base damage rate as stock fists, but the advantage is that on kill, it grants 5 seconds of guaranteed critical hits for all weapons. But what's the downside? Well, it's 20% slower swing rate, or firing speed, or whatever you want to call it. Now at face value, it would seem that the Killing Gloves of Boxing give a really good benefit, guaranteed critical hits for a pretty negligible downside, a 20% slower swing rate. But that's not really the case, and it mostly comes down to practicality. You're really only going to be using your melee when you're out of ammo, so if you get the guaranteed critical hits on a kill with somebody, it's not going to do you a whole lot of good unless you plan to keep punching through other enemies around you. Granted, if you kill somebody, you'll now have ammo, and you can pull out your minigun, deploy it, and start shooting at people, but by the time you do that, your critical hits are just about all used up. Or worse yet, somebody has already killed you because your health was already low from taking a lot of damage while you were trying to recover ammo, and so on and so forth. The critical hits are great, you just don't really use them that much, because you don't have the opportunity to do so. Now, there is one exception to this. The Killing Gloves of Boxing give you 5 seconds of guaranteed critical hits per kill. So if you kill somebody with those critical hits, it resets it, and you can get a loop of a 5-second guaranteed critical hits as long as you're killing somebody with them. Problem is, that's only going to work if you're in a really enclosed space or if everybody's restricted to melee. And for that reason, that actually makes this a really great pick for playing on a map like Deadroot Keep. That's definitely one situation where I could see the guaranteed critical hits outweighing the slower swing rate. But for regular gameplay, well, answer's no. Gloves of Running Urgently. The Gloves of Running Urgently, like most other melees on this list, have a base damage rate of 65 hit points. Its claim to fame, however, is that when it's active, it grants the user 30% faster speed movement. The downside, however, is that it takes 50% longer to switch from the glove to another weapon or from another weapon to the gloves. But an even bigger downside, your maximum health is drained while the item is active at a rate of -10 per second to a minimum of 100 health. Now the thing about this health drain is it's kind of unique. The health isn't lost in the same way damage is, like you're not being damaged or bleeding out the health or anything like that, and you can't recover it by going to a medical kit. What's actually happening is like your health cap is just draining per second, and then when you unequip the item, it starts to climb back up again. It's really weird how this is set up, and I'm pretty sure it's really the only item in the game that's like this. Now the obvious downside here is that if you're using the item to get around faster, it's going to make your health drain, and then you're more susceptible to enemy attacks until you unequip the item, in which case you're going to have to wait a little while for your health to go back up to normal before you can feel comfortable facing enemies again. Which brings about the whole question anyway, what's even the point of having a faster melee in the first place? On the other hand, if you need to escape and your health is already pretty dang low anyway, well, then that still wouldn't help a lot because you would still lose health. Even if your health is below 100, it's still going to go down to 33% of what your maximum current health can be. For example, if I've got 90 health and I equip the Gloves of Running Urgently and start taking off across the map, it could potentially go all the way down to 30, which is 1/3 of what my health is until I unequip the item and it starts climbing up again. It's annoying because the Gloves of Running Urgently probably have the biggest upside as far as all the melees are concerned because they actually give you a practical benefit to using them by addressing a fix to one of the Heavy's biggest downsides of using the whole class, which is lack of speed. The problem is they're such a headache to use because of this downside of losing your health, which is one of the biggest potential upsides of Heavy. The Warrior Spirit. The Warrior Spirit has a base damage rate of 85 hit points, which is a 30% damage bonus over the stock fists. It also grants an additional 50 health points on kill. The downside, however, is that there is a 30% damage vulnerability while the weapon is active. The Warrior Spirit is a bad choice for regular gameplay, and the reason is because you're mostly going to be using your melee item again when you don't have any ammo, and not having any ammo is going to already put you in a vulnerable situation, so the last thing you need is 30% additional damage vulnerability. Now sure, you can punch somebody and kill them quicker with the 30% damage bonus, and you'll get extra health on kill, but you know, it just depends on how close in proximity you are to your opponent, how much health they already have, etc. You know, it's gonna be kind of hard to face off against them in a little melee match if you have a 30% negative damage vulnerability on your side. All these additional perks aren't really gonna kick in, especially the health one, unless you actually come out on top there, but your chances of coming out on top are drastically lower now. Basically what I'm saying in a roundabout fashion is the downside is way too great to overcome the upside perks. So what about melee mode? How does it fare if you're playing on Deadroot Keep? Well, I did use this pretty extensively on Deadroot Keep in conjunction with the buffalo steak sandwich, and it was decent. It was definitely a very useful weapon because of the additional damage bonus, but again, the damage vulnerability really came back to bite you. The additional 50 health points on kill was nice, but not super useful since in Deadroot Keep, whenever you kill somebody, they always drop a small health kit anyway. I could usually take out enemies pretty good one-on-one, but there was always the one demo night with the crits on the Scotsman's Skull Cutter, or the random arrow from a sniper that got me, like it normally would be, except now they could do a lot more damage because again, that extra 30% damage vulnerability. Stuff that wouldn't normally kill me with just one shot now did kill me with one shot. It's not that this was a bad weapon for melee, but I really felt like I'd rather just be using the killing gloves of boxing here, because then I could get all those additional crits and just keep that going even without having to worry about the buffalo steak sandwich. The Fist of Steel. The Fist of Steel have a base damage rate of 65 hit points, and their main advantage is that you take 40% less damage from ranged sources while active, with ranged sources being guns, sentries, whatever. The downsides, however, is that it has 100% slower switch from speed, 100% increased damage vulnerability from melee sources while the item is active, and 40% less of a maximum overheal on the wearer, not to mention a 40% less overall healing from medics. Now obviously, because of the 100% damage vulnerability from melee sources, this is not something that you want to use in melee mode, so we can cross Degroot Keep right off. But what about in regular gameplay? Well, the Fist of Steel is actually a great melee option for regular gameplay, but in a way where you don't really want to use it in the traditional sense of using a melee item. You don't want to use it just to escape when you run out of ammo or whatever. The way the Fist of Steel is designed is it gives you a lot more of an advantage that you can use it for beyond just running away and protecting yourself and fighting when you don't have the option of using your gun. The Fist of Steel really gives you a lot of opportunities to use the item as basically like a shield, because you're going to be taking far less damage from sniper shots, soldier rockets, and a lot of other things where you need to walk out in the open and move from area to area where you could potentially be at risk, while at the same time being in a situation where it's not viable to shoot back at your targets. Now, there is the issue of the 40% less maximum overheal and the 40% lower healing rate, but there are some actual potential upsides to having at least the lower healing rate anyway, such as the fact that you're now going to be building up Uber a whole lot more quickly. If you've ever played Medic with the Boston Basher Scout, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. To be fair, this weapon does have its downsides, but when used correctly, it gives you the biggest potential to be pretty much the ultimate tank. The Eviction Notice. The Eviction Notice has a base damage rate of 26 hit points, which is 60% less damage than what stock fists do. However, it has the upsides of 40% faster firing speed, 15% faster move speed while active, and you gain a 3-second speed boost on hit. However, the other downside is that your maximum health is drained while item is active at a rate of -5 per second to a minimum of 100. Just like the Gloves of Running Urgently, except it's 5 per second instead of 10. So when I first saw the Eviction Notice, I immediately thought, oh, it's like the Gloves of Running Urgently, except for the fact that it sacrifices damage for a few extra speed mechanics and gimmicks and stuff like that. But upon using it, I realized that the Eviction Notice does a lot of things, but does absolutely nothing at all well. It's not an effective medieval mode weapon because the damage is 60% less. The 40% faster firing speed is pretty much worthless because of the low damage it does. The 3-second speed boost on hit isn't particularly helpful either, because when you're hitting somebody, they're going to be in front of you, and that speed boost doesn't really allow you to get anywhere if they're blocking your way unless you go around them, and they can still follow you and shoot you from behind. Especially if it's a weaker, faster class like a medic, a scout, a spy, whatever. It sounds great in theory, but there's just so few situations where it's actually practical to use. Now on the bright side, your health is drained by only 5 per second instead of 10 like the Gloves of Running Urgently, but that's actually worse. Now how is that possible? Well, you move 15% faster while you have the item active as opposed to 30% faster. So it is going to take you a good bit longer to reach your destination. Now, theoretically, that should be fine because the health being drained is half, just like the movement speed bonus is half. But see, the movement speed is a bonus as a percentage. You're not going to get to your location twice as fast with the Gloves of Running Urgently than you will with the Eviction Notice. Now that being said, you're still going to have more health left over by the time you reach your destination with the Eviction Notice versus the Gloves of Running Urgently because of the slower drain time. But there is one little caveat that messes the whole system up. The Gloves of Running Urgently, you lose your health quicker, but as soon as you unequip the item, you gain it back at the rate of 10 per second. But with the Eviction Notice, you gain it back slower at the same rate that it's drained at, -5 per second. So it is going to take you longer to get to your destination with the Eviction Notice than the Gloves of Running Urgently. You're going to already be slower, but on top of that, even though you are losing less health, you are going to be losing it for a longer period of time. You will not get it back as quickly as if you just used the Gloves of Running Urgently, lost more health, but got it back a lot quicker. So effectively, this actually has a worse health drop-off in the long term with the Eviction Notice than it does with the Gloves of Running Urgently. So at the end of the day, it's going to take you longer to get from point A to point B on the map, and you're going to be the worse off for health with the Eviction Notice versus the Gloves of Running Urgently. And the only exception for that would be if you could figure out a way to take advantage of the 3-second speed boost on hit. But considering how situational and kind of gimmicky that is, it's just probably not going to work out for you for the better in most situations or even most of the time. So because of this, I'd recommend you stay clear of the Eviction Notice. The Holiday Punch. The Holiday Punch has a base damage rate of 65 hit points, just like the stock fists, but what makes it unique is it has 0 damage for critical hits. Critical hits do no damage whatsoever. Now, the way this weapon is set up is it's set up to be kind of like a joke item, but that doesn't mean it can't be used effectively. See, the upsides to it is that a critical hit forces a victim to laugh, basically do almost kind of like a little laughing taunt. And you're always going to be getting a critical hit when you hit the enemy from behind. And then if the enemy is also wearing this item, then you'll force them to laugh if you hit them anywhere. So what exactly is the point of the Holiday Punch? Well, if you hit an enemy from behind with it and force them to laugh, they won't be able to shoot or defend themselves, so then you could pull out your gun and take them out, and so could anybody else around you. This is an item that's definitely built entirely around one gimmick, and I think it has the potential to create some funny situations, but given how difficult this would be to pull off unless you're just planning on being a sneaky heavy the whole game, I don't recommend that you use this for your regular loadout. It would make for a cool item to keep around your inventory to just kind of have some funny situations with, but for just serious regular gameplay, don't use the Holiday Punch. Alright guys, well, we have finally covered every single item in the Heavy's loadout, and I know this has already been an exhaustingly in-depth video, but we still have to reveal the #1 pick from each category to build the optimal loadout. The loadout that works together the best and that plays for the strengths of the Heavy class using each of the various items. Now, I just want to stress before I give the loadout that this is just my opinion on what everything plays best together, and there are other good combos that will work, but I think that out of everything, this is going to be the best of the best. Before I reveal the loadout, I just want to say, if you guys have enjoyed this video, please do leave a like on it. I would really definitely appreciate that. And also, I want to say a big thank you to our monthly T-Squad Plus members of our channel program who pay money every month to support the channel on a monthly basis. Really do appreciate you guys, and you help make this video possible. But yeah, guys, let's go ahead and reveal our #1 loadout pick. And for our primary weapon, we are going to be going with the Tomislav. The Tomislav is just the best all-around primary for Heavy. It just has so many great advantages. You got that faster spin-up time, you're more accurate, you can do better shooting from a distance, which is not something the Heavy is super great at. And really, it's just gonna be better than the stock minigun about 2 out of every 3 situations. Unless you're just catching enemy super close, already revved up with the minigun, you're probably gonna be better off going at him with the Tomislav every single time. So that's why this is the best weapon out of the 2. It basically came down to just minigun versus Tomislav, and the minigun is great, and I've used it for a long time, but the Tomislav has just got that little edge where it's better in more situations. Nothing else that even came close, because all the primary weapons for Heavy other than these 2 are really not worth it. Unless you're playing MVM, then go with Brass Beast. Anyway, for secondary, we are going to go with the sandwich. Now, there's a lot of great health items for the heavy. The secondary weapons like the shotguns are pretty much useless when you have the option of using the minigun. There's really no reason to use them unless you're just playing around with them for the fun of it. But when you're doing a serious loadout, you want a health item for your secondary. And the reason I chose the sandwich is it basically came down to the sandwich versus the banana. And why I'd say the banana is better if you're kind of playing by yourself, the heavy is really supposed to be a team-based, almost not quite a support class, but definitely a team heavy class that's going to be not only dependent on his team to back him up and help him, but also the team is kind of dependent on him to absorb damage and dispense health to the medic or to maybe an engineer or whatever. And the sandwich is the best way to do that because it acts as a medium health kit when you use your alt fire versus the small health kit of the banana. Really, if you're gonna be playing heavy, you want a team to back you up, you want a medic, that's the best way to play. And if you got that team to back you up, the sandwich is gonna be the best thing that you can use, not only for yourself, but for your teammates as well. And finally, we move on to the melee, probably the most controversial pick of the lot. I'm gonna go with the Gloves of Running Urgently. The Gloves of Running Urgently just kind of gives you the best bang for your buck because when you really need to get across a little stretch of area, the Gloves of Running Urgently help you to go across it a lot more speedily. And yes, the downside of the health being drained is a big deal, but it does go up fairly quickly again, so as long as you can kind of stay out of fire as long as you're running, then I'd say, hey, go with the Gloves of Running Urgently. It's also great when you're just spawned like way back in an area during like a 5 control point map and you need to get into the action. That's the quickest way you're gonna be able to go and get into the action instead of just having to walk so slow. The whole big slow part of the class, the part that's just the most annoying part of playing heavy, it really helps you kind of start to overcome it. So yeah, that's the loadout, guys. Tomislav, sandwich, and Gloves of Running Urgently. And that is the heavy loadout video. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. It took me a lot of time to make. Even just the audio recording alone, I haven't even started with the editing yet, but I'm sure that'll take a while too. I promised this video a long time ago. It should have been out like 3 months previously, and I'm sorry it took so long to do, but with school, with work, with everything, and with me even just kind of shirking this because I just wanted to focus on streaming and stuff like that. I really just need to take more time to work on this project and stop being lazy. Now, our next loadout video that we're gonna be coming out with will be in loadout for engineers, but I'm not gonna tell you guys when I'm gonna make that because I don't wanna make promises again that I can't keep. Just know that will be coming eventually, but that's not my biggest priority is making that video right now. But yeah, please let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. What loadout do you usually use when you play heavy? What do you like about it? Just share it with me. Let me know what your thoughts are about the video, about your loadouts, about heavy in general, whatever you want to do. And yeah, until next time, I've been your host, Kaskarte Utica. This has been the best heavy loadout for 2020. And until next time, I will see you all at the top.
I'm about to end this man's whole career. Aside from my soul.